Thank you very much indeed, and in particular to Rusi for inviting me to chair this conference, and in particular to have the opportunity to listen to our guest speaker, Robert Davies, who is the Chief Executive of Areva UK. And Areva is not a bus company and it's not an insurance company, although they've got similar names. It's one of the most important companies actually operating in the UK at the moment. Its heritage, of course, is in France and comes from a very sort of distinguished line of nuclear companies and nuclear success and nuclear power in France. But it's also been involved in an internationalization program that involves building reactors in Finland as well as Flamanville in France, and most pertinently to those of us living on this island, to Hinkley Point C. Areva is a 10% shareholder, and it's the designer and will help build the European pressurized reactors that are planned for Somerset, if that comes about. As a journalist, I've spent most of my life tracking the difficulties of Areva, so I'm not the best place to eulogize, but I do know they've got 4 billion euros worth of revenues, they've got 45,000 staff, and they've got this track record, as I say, emanating from their origins when they were known as Framatome. Rob Davies himself is a man used to difficulty and adversity, so Hinkley Point or any other issues will not be of great worry to him in respect of he's seen a lot. He spent 25 years in the Royal Navy, he commanded 3 warships, so I presume he's used to friendly and other fire if it comes to it. He followed that up. He possibly did something terribly wrong because he followed it up by being sent off to the budgetary and planning appointments inside the Ministry of Defence. Not quite sure what you have to do to get that. But he left the MOD, he did an MBA, and he joined Framatome when it was called that in 1995, concentrating on services and waste management. And Areva is also involved in decommissioning at Sellafield in Cumbria. So they've got their feet in a lot of different areas. Robert.
Thank you. Hello. After that excitement after lunch, I have not had so much excitement since the last Areva board meeting. That was good. I stand and speak to you today as Robert Davies, not as the Chief Executive of Areva. I hope that is, have you got that on tape? Good, that's great. All right, so I stand before you as an ex-sailor, 25 years Royal Navy, and 20 years in the UK civil nuclear industry, working for the French company, as described here, Framatome and Areva. And today I hand the baton, or the very minor control that I wield, from me to you, because you are the future, not me. I'll be leaving the door of being Chief Executive of Areva UK end of this month. I loathe the word retire, so I'm going to do other things. But I'm handing the baton to you. So I'd like to share with you some thoughts, if I can, on UK nuclear, what we've achieved, and why I believe you must not lose it. You will find that my views are not totally in line with what you've heard this morning. In fact, some of them will be 180 degrees difference. You can question or throw buns at me with pleasure. I don't mind. We can have a discussion. So, forgive me also if I do not give my views now or in questions of whether Hinkley Point will proceed if and when FID is announced, or if the Flamanville reactor pressure vessel is likely to be accepted by the French safety authorities. They're all very important issues. I have breathed and lived these for some 14 years. But the French President, the French Economy Minister, Monsieur Macron, the Chairman and Chief Executive of EDF have all made clear statements, and Messrs Macalister, Pagnamenta and others have given us their views, sometimes daily, on this. So like Brexit, I ask you to take your pick, and if you like, you can go to Ladbrokes, they'll take your money with pleasure. Okay, the conference agenda covers nuclear in defence, the ultimate deterrent, and nuclear in energy. Both place the UK in a very small and a very special club. It's one of 5 nuclear weapons states under the NPT. It's one of 31 countries that operate commercial nuclear power plants, and one of 56 countries who operate civil research reactors. It's a special place. and we have and continue to treat our membership of this club with due care. Your role is to continue the process. Defence nuclear and energy nuclear, as I will call them, are clearly linked. It is possible to have one and not the other. But importantly, having both should and must lead to efficiencies and to synergies, some of which were outlined this morning. Now, defence nuclear is 100% a state enterprise, with the government controlling policy, rationale, governance, and delivery. Energy nuclear, if not fully, then can be partially a state enterprise. But it cannot be left solely to the market to manipulate and to decide. The degree of market influence depends on each state. So rightly, nuclear is politically driven and hence is politically controversial. Projects and plants span many governments. Current new build could span north of 15 administrations. Let us not forget, nuclear is not just about power and weapons. It has a key role in medicine and scientific research, in industry, as well as in food and agriculture. But I'm going to leave the field of defence nuclear now and concentrate solely on energy nuclear. And I'd like us to go on a journey. And then we're going to do some climbing. Cast your mind back, 2002, we had an industry and banks saying that new investment in new nuclear plants would be pretty much impossible. In 2006, just 10 years ago, Tony Blair, his administration, said the government believes that nuclear has a role to play in future energy generation mix. The basis was climate change, energy security, and replacing an old, smoky, sagging, and frankly, exhausted UK energy infrastructure. In April of this year, just 10 weeks ago, Minister Leadsom used similar words, with new nuclear has a crucial role to play as the UK makes the transition to a low-carbon economy. Now, do not fall off your chairs, but I fully support and endorse both statements. Nuclear is the answer to the provision of affordable, carbon-free, baseload electricity. UK must decarbonise its power sector, and nuclear should be at the heart of that generation infrastructure. Now, you may well debate whether the UK can and should pay to be at the forefront of low-carbon generation to limit carbon change. Something that, frankly, could possibly be an issue in November this year in the US elections. Be that as it may, what I will now describe are the factors that have been instrumental in getting us to where we are today, and the one factor that may need to be tweaked if we are to reach the mountain summit. Don't forget the climbing. So following Tony Blair's statement in 2006, I ran an alliance of 11 European utilities expressing interest in new nuclear power generation. They all had strong balance sheets. They all had ambition. 5 designs, no, that's 10, wasn't it? 5 designs sat on the GDA grid, ready to get going, the GDA process shining off the printing press. The promise of electricity market reform and planning reform was succor to potential investors. The air was fragrant with opportunity. In the space of 12 years, we went from 11 European utility and 5 vendors starting GDA to 2 European utilities, 3 vendors, plus a Chinese vendor, developer, and operator. And that's what's on the table today. So what was the journey to develop that market, and where are we today? Now, the first bit of any journey, you've got to study the map and check the kit. Sorry, once military, always military. And frankly, in 2006, it did not look too good. The last reactor to be built, Sizewell B, was commissioned a decade earlier. The CGB had long gone, and the experience of the 340-day planning inquiry for Sizewell B sent shivers down potential investors' spines. So the UK government decided to redraw the map, and it formed a single Office of Nuclear Development, a one-stop shop to handle the interface with industry, and more importantly, the development of the landscape across government departmental silos. It is to the credit of this country and the government that it did change and develop an acceptable landscape for new build. This is no mean task, and I know of no other country that has achieved this speed of change in peacetime. Their culture was and remains open. There's a willingness to engage, to understand, to learn, and to some extent manage the departmental differences and silos. This is unusual and is rarely mirrored in other countries. Secondly, it tackled the licensing issue. Projects must reduce licensing risk. Having a regulator stop a project in midstream costs the project investors millions a day, millions. The UK regulator introduced the GDA process, whereby as an investor you pay tens of millions, not hundreds, just tens of millions, for a four-stage process that would highlight issues that would not be acceptable to the regulator if you built the thing. And this is before any high-vis jackets or any JCBs operating. It's an excellent system, and the cost is minimal when compared to the potential risk of starting, then having to stop and redesign. And often not stated, what the process promotes is it starts a relationship between the developer, then the licensee, then the operator with the UK regulators. Why? Because like any relationship, there has to be born of trust, and trust is easily lost and slowly gained. And the rules are simple. Be transparent, be honest, and no surprises. One GDA confirmation has been granted to date, 2 others are well on their way, and others are knocking on the door. Now, getting a GDA confirmation has a commercial currency to it. It may not be transferable, but it's a stamp of approval from a highly regulated regulator. The government decides who is allowed to start the process, and rightly, because it must be in our national interest who goes into this process. Thirdly, it addressed the issue of planning and the introduction of the Infrastructure Planning Commission in 2009. And fourthly, and most important of all, it introduced electricity market reform and the introduction of contracts for difference and strike prices. Why? Because this gave certainty and stability to revenues. Certainty and stability to revenues. And this swung the pendulum from that of a fluctuating market to that of government control, and it laid a framework that was acceptable to potential investors. After all, the government wanted and wants private equity and debt to fund new nuclear plants, not public. So the turf was laid for investors to come and play. But, to quote our ex-Prime Minister Macmillan, Super Mac, events, dear boys, events. So what was the event? All major investments develop in particular contexts. UK new build was based on the assumption that fossil prices were expected to maintain or keep going up. And that, to some extent, is the rub. That is not how it is seen today by some parties. The electricity prices in Europe and the US have tanked. Isabelle Kocher, CEO of Engie, states the price of electricity will stay low and has no reason to rise. It will never be like it was before. Jean-Bernard Lévy, Chief Executive President of EDF, the price of megawatt hour in Western Europe has virtually been divided by 2. Since 2011, the price of megawatt hour in Germany has fallen from 60 to 25 euros per megawatt hour, in France 65 to 30. The share price of EDF has gone down by 63%, RWE 75, Engie by 50%. This is eye-watering from industry that is fundamental to our economic and social stability. We cannot do without power. Moving across the pond to the United States, I'm concerned that unless the deregulated US electricity market recognize the carbon-free attributes of nuclear plants, there'll be a substantial number of nuclear plants closures in that great country. Let's not forget that nuclear power accounts for, 20% of its overall electricity generation, but also accounts for 60% of the country's carbon-free electricity, more than wind, solar, and hydro combined. So in the UK, the CFD and strike price mechanism takes away that risk. That luxury is not available in the deregulated markets of the US. But it still leaves European utilities and potential new build investors having to navigate some rocky balance sheet waters. Finding an answer to the challenge posed by the structure and fluidity of today's European electricity markets is beyond my ken, but I hope it's not beyond yours. It would be surprising, nay tragic, if we come so far just to have it trip at this last stage. So, I said we'd go climbing. Developing a nuclear project has similarities with climbing challenging. Let us consider an arbitrary 5-stage challenge to the peak. My apologies to Chris Bonington or Chris Sharma of the United States. Stage 1 is where, frankly, we're still on the bus to the slopes or in the cafe. This is wouldn't it be a good idea if phase? It's warm, it's chatty, it's easy, it's non-committal. Many countries and projects are in this exploratory phase of new build. In the UK, some SMRs are here, and large plant developers, though, have well left the car park and are on their way up the slopes. Stage 2, the lower slopes. This is relatively easy. Boards have signed up to low investment, low risk. GDA has started. You've got a foothold. You've identified and secure a site, although I don't call the $1 billion paid for the Wilfer and Oldbury sites as low investment, but you've got a site. You've got outlined project plans. Companies are exploring with purpose. That's what the boards have told the project teams to do. And it's here you consider and decide your industrial model. How are you going to do this? In the UK, there is one new build project at this stage. Some SMRs have just left the car park, and there's some mud on their boots, but not much. Stage 3, the middle slopes. Life's getting tough now. Boards are committing significant monies to project development. You've got teams of 150 to 200 plus, armies of consultants supporting you and saying, I can help you, serious discussions and negotiations with UK government, and the corresponding hunt for investors. You're finalizing your contracts with major suppliers. Your project program and cost is nearing maturity. The GDA must have passed all major hurdles. And what is outstanding of the GDA and your design is seen as being achievable. It's not an open book. You're seen as being a serious player in the UK. One new build player is at that stage in UK today. Stage 4, oxygen engaged. Only the best and toughest make it here. You're spending 20 to 30 million a month. GDA and regulatory permissions have been achieved. You've established engineering centres, delivery centres, training and skills systems. You've got a massive agreements and commitments to local and national organisations. You've got a realistic project programme, realistic project cost, the basis for your strike price. You're seen as a, if not the, major national project. And there is major diplomatic, political and industrial expectation, nay commitment, but there's still no final investment. There's still no final investment by a board and investors which realise that this is probably the most important corporate decision they'll probably ever make. Now, spectators in the car park, go back down to stage 1, they're all gazing through their telescopes now. There's a huge amount of comment going on, and they're all experts. Will they, won't they? Cafes doing roaring trade. But quietly behind the scenes, the guys on the middle and lower slopes are looking up that mountain, trying hard to learn the lessons from their altitude colleagues and answer the endless questions coming from the boards are we going to be in that position, or are you prove to me that we're not? Stage 5 is the summit and the FID. And this, remember, is then the start, not the end. Now you have to build, which requires a step change in gear and drive. So when considering HPC, please remember, it's the only UK project at stage 4 with GDA, development consent order, full finance, CFD, strike price, all agreements, papers, documents, contracts ready. Except one. Because HPC is waiting for stage 5. I want to just cover something on SMRs. Some see these as being a new solution. Why? The proponents argue that these can be built by the dozen in the factory, transported to sites, plugged in, so you could achieve economies of volume. They may produce revenues more quickly than big reactors because of shorter construction time to the bars. They may use much less water for cooling, therefore location could be more flexible. And the UK government is keen for, I believe, 3 reasons. One, it allows us, the UK, the opportunity to gain a reactor plant in IP. Important. And that will benefit the UK supply chain rather than the supply chains of France, Japan, the United States. Secondly, with such IP and first mover status, it shouldn't enable UK to export and to leverage what's been achieved here. And thirdly, it provides the next step in nuclear development to those projects already on the mountainside. But it would be a mistake. It would be a mistake to see this as an alternative to those projects on the mountainside. Why? Some of these have not been built. Some have not even moved beyond the basic design stage. And all on the mountainside know, they all know, that licensing the GDA process costs millions and takes 5 years or so. The British market will, I believe, be too small to cover the development costs. And also, whether you wish to build a tiddler or a mega, you need a design license, you need safety approval, you need planning and local approval. Many of these costs are as much fixed as they are variable to the size of the reactor. That said, as a UK taxpayer, I'm all in favour of the UK government's approach, for I want us to explore every opportunity to build our domestic nuclear design and development industry. If UK is to stay as the European nuclear developer, which we are, the European nuclear developer, then it's only right that we develop an industrial model that will benefit us in a sustainable manner. Now, the UK has achieved a remarkable feat in crafting a landscape for new nuclear. As I said earlier, I know of no other country that's achieved this. 3 developers on the mountainside, 1 just below the summit. So I ask you not to be fickle and look away and cast your eyes down to the shiny boots in the car park and walk away from those hardy climbers. Whether government needs to tweak the landscape to support making the summit, I do not know. Clever people like you in this audience will be able to comment and make your views known on that. At the end of the day, you have to decide your balance between the state and market. The nuclear agenda remains both exciting and challenging, with plans for replacement deterrent, nuclear new build, and a significant legacy cleanup. To be successful, we will need to be transparent and realistic with respect to CapEx costs and risk, an area which the industry, frankly, has been woefully poor at, to put it to date. B, optimize synergies between civil and defense nuclear. We've got to bring commercial realism from the civil into the defense, and perhaps the other way around. Share infrastructure and discuss common skills. And we have to explore, in my opinion, synergies and efficiencies between nations which have similar nuclear DNA. In this instance, because of my experience, I cite the UK and France, the 2 major European nuclear powers in the civil and defense sectors. They share a DNA, they share a common history, they have similar challenges with respect to major nuclear waste issues. So share and save is my maxim, and the taxpayers will appreciate the effort. To conclude, nuclear is the reliable, low-carbon baseload energy generator. We're right to support a vigorous UK development market. There's naught else. So do not let UK new build stumble as it nears the summit. We're a trusted member of a select club holding the 2 cards of defense nuclear and energy nuclear, and a 3rd card, that of legacy waste, which emanates from the first 2. Success with making all 3 work together to optimize synergies and be as transparent as possible. In fact, it's one UK nuclear. I wonder if government would like to enlarge and empower its Office of Nuclear Development to encompass all those 3. The end.